Hello and welcome back to another video. My name is Sydney and today I'm doing my June reading wrap up. June was probably the biggest month I've had, I think, ever with reading. I read 12 books last month. A lot of it has to do with the fact that I went on a total thriller binge. I read 5 Freida McFadden books and they're so quick and bingeable and easy to read. So that definitely added to my book count for June, but I'm so excited to break down each of the books that I read this month, what I thought of them, so let's get into it. The first book that I read in June is technically a Dramione fanfiction, and I absolutely loved this. This is one of my favorite Dramiones of all time. It's so quick, it's just a short, good read. And if you've been following me, you know that I am a huge Dramione fan. Draco and Hermione should have ended up together in the original series. Basically the best enemies to lovers pairing of all time, and I'm just obsessed. I did decide to buy myself a physical copy of this fanfiction, but you can read it for free on archiveofourown.org. Fanfiction is not legal to sell or purchase, so if you want a physical copy, I would definitely learn how to bookbind. It's such a fun hobby. And you get to have physical copies of your favorite Dramione fanfics if you're a huge fanfic reader like I am. So this one is 10 out of 10 by Morgan Mercy. It's a very slow burn marriage of convenience fic. In this one, we are post-war and Draco and Hermione are basically paired together by the Ministry of Magic to get married and have kids and replenish the population, so to speak. And of course they have issues with that. But the stakes are pretty high because either they do it or they die, or they end up in Azkaban forever, and neither of them want that. So what I loved most about this is the slow build in this story is absolutely delicious. The forced proximity and just the little moments that we get between them where they're slowly starting to have feelings for each other is just like, it's so well done. I will die on this hill that there are fan fictions out there that are leagues better than traditionally published romance books, and somehow these fanfic writers are just able to write tension and romance in a way that is just addicting. And I say addicting because I've literally read over 100 Dramione fanfictions and I have no plan to stop anytime soon. So if you're looking to get into Dramione, this is a really good place to start. It's under 250 pages. The spice is just chef's kiss and it's so much fun and it's cute and the banter is well written. And I just ate this up. Even on a second read, I had just as much fun as I did the first time. And the second book that I read in June was The Unmaking of June Pharaoh. I actually just purchased the Fairy Loot special edition of this book. It hasn't arrived yet, so I can't include it in this video, but I'm so excited for the sprayed edges. I'll insert a picture of what it looks like here, and I can't wait to have my hands on this copy because this was hands down probably one of my top favorite reads of this year. I rated it 4.5 stars. I loved the magical realism in this book, but I also loved the romance aspect. I feel like that part was done so well. And I've said this multiple times, but I think that the way this story feels is exactly like what a Hosier song feels like. And the atmosphere, the kind of folksy indie feel of this book is just beautiful. So in this story, we have June Pharaoh. She is the daughter of a long lineage of women who are actually cursed. Her mother, her grandmother, her aunt, pretty much every woman in her family later on in their life has experienced visions and hallucinations and sort of started to go crazy as they got older. And she essentially knows this is going to happen to her because it's happened to everyone else in her family. And this story is her trying to figure out how to break this curse, how to break this pattern. And what unfolds is a really interesting plot line where we have multiple timelines. We have, again, that magical realism. The romance that we get in this story between the male and female main characters is so passionate, but there's that longing there because we have multiple timelines involved, and so the stakes are very, very high. I also just love the setting and atmosphere of this story. The way Adrienne Young writes it is so descriptive. It's set on a flower farm in southern United States, and it's just so summery and laid back and reminds me of warm nights and spending all day outside, and it just has that cozy feeling, and I just loved it. And the next book I read was Ask for Andrea. This is such a good thriller. My mom actually recommended this to me because she really enjoyed it and said you need to read this. It was very unique. I like how this was actually told from the perspective of multiple women who were victims of murder. So we have them in their spirit form as they haunt their killer, and it's so interesting to see them track his next move and to follow him around and see what his life is like. There was so much suspense and the writing was so fast-paced that I stayed up so late to finish this book. It's such a quick read, very bingeable. You can honestly finish this in just a couple of days, and it's also available on Kindle Unlimited, so I would go check it out if you're looking for a thriller that's different and unique. Because when do we actually get to hear from the perspective of a woman after she's been killed. And although the themes in this book are obviously heavy, it's a thriller, there was a lot of lightness and playfulness and humor in this story as well, which I think really helped balance out the fact that we're reading about dead people. I really liked it, and I rated this one 4 stars. And then of course I went on a Frida McFadden bender and I read 5 of her books. I read almost all of them on audio because I actually recently got a subscription to Everand, which has audiobooks and ebooks. A lot of her books are available on that app. Frida McFadden's books are so easy to listen to on audio because typically I struggle with audiobooks, especially if it's like a fantasy or a story with dense world building, because if I kind of go off track mentally for 5 seconds, I miss so much and I have to rewind. But with Frida McFadden, her thrillers are so just easy to listen to. They're very digestible and quick and fast paced. I understand why everyone's so obsessed with her books. So the first one that I read was The Teacher. This was a 5-star read for me. I absolutely was blown away by the plot twist at the end. And the cool thing about her books is that there's usually 1 or 2 or sometimes even 3 plot twists. And so I thought when I got to the end of this book that that was like the big banger, but of course we have the epilogue where I was just completely thrown for a loop, even more than the first time. So that one was really, really good. This one's about a married couple who are sort of our main characters, and they're both teachers. So she is a math teacher and he is an English teacher. The story starts out where it's the first day of school and they're both going to work at the same school. And there's this girl who's a 16-year-old who has some sort of scandal and controversy surrounding her because I think it was like a year prior, there was actually a school teacher that was fired, or he resigned for allegedly having some sort of affair with this 16-year-old student. Nothing's been proven. It's kind of all speculation why he resigned, but everyone obviously thinks that it's because something inappropriate happened with her and him. And so this 16-year-old girl, she actually ends up in the class of the man and the woman who are married, if that makes sense. I forget their names. I probably should be using more names to make it less confusing, but I can't keep up with all the character names. So the 16-year-old girl ends up in both of their class, and of course the woman is concerned because she does not want her husband teaching this younger girl because of the scandal that surrounds her. And then it goes from there, and we've got so many layers that are peeled back in this story. I like this even better than The Housemaid. I still think this is my top Frida McFadden book that I've read. I can't recommend it enough. Next, I read Never Lie, also by Frida McFadden. This one was also really good. I didn't quite like it as much as The Teacher because I felt that the ending, the plot twist is a bit far-fetched and kind of just unbelievable, but not in a good way. It was kind of like, okay, that is reaching just a tiny bit. But I've also heard that this book is a favorite by many people who enjoy Frida McFadden as well. So it's still very high up there. I just didn't like the ending quite as much as I did with The Teacher. And this story follows a man and a woman. They have just recently been married, and so they are looking for a new house to move into. The story starts out with them meeting up, or planning to meet up with their realtor to view this big house that they're very interested in. So they drive all the way there. There's a snowstorm. They arrive at the house and it's completely empty. The realtor is nowhere to be found. They can't get a hold of her because they've got no service. It's storming like crazy outside, and they're trapped there, and they have no choice but to spend the night in this dark, empty house that is huge and was also owned previously by a very well-known psychiatrist who wrote very many books and was very famous. The story unfolds from there, and it's really, really good. I was so convinced that I had the plot and the outcome predicted, and I was genuinely like, I know exactly how this is gonna end. Like, I can see where this is going. I think the author knew that people would come to that same conclusion, so she kind of played along with it and made you think it was going one way. And then towards the end, like 70%, she was like, gotcha, and totally flipped it around and gave us an entirely new plot twist that I was not expecting whatsoever. And that's why I read thrillers. That's why I read books with plot twists, because I love just being thrashed around and having no idea what's going on and just riding along with it. I find that so enjoyable. So if you are looking for a good thriller, this is also a really good one to start with. And then I read The Inmate, and this one was not my favorite Frida McFadden. I think that I was really enjoying the first little bit of it, but the male main character in this story gave me the creepiest vibes, but not in a good way. I was just so uncomfortable with everything that he did and said, and it really threw me out of the story. But in this book, we have our female main character. She goes to work at a prison because she has a nursing background, and so she goes to work there as a nurse, and we find out that she actually has a previous connection to one of the inmates. And what drove me crazy about this book is that she made bad decision after bad decision after stupid decision. I just wasn't convinced that it was real. Like, I know obviously you have to suspend your belief a little bit when you're reading books like this, but at the same time, she basically had no logic in her brain whatsoever, and I was just like, okay, let's just not be acting like we want to ruin our lives. I don't know. This one was good. I will say the plot twist in the epilogue was phenomenal. Like, that, the first plot twist, I was kind of just like, I sort of saw it coming, but the second one in the epilogue, I was just kicking my feet. I was so excited about it. So that definitely bumped it up from about a 3 stars to like maybe 3.5. So this one was good. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it as well. I would still recommend it. And then I read The Coworker, and this was probably my least, actually second to least favorite of hers. I don't know. This one, I rated 2 stars. I really enjoyed the first half. Like, part 1 was solid. We were getting a lot of different characters. The relationships between all the different people were really interesting. But then the second half, I feel like the plot twist was just completely out of nowhere. I like that to a sense where I don't want to see the plot twist coming, but I still want to believe it. I still want there to be some sort of hints throughout the story that make the plot twist make sense and to make it exciting when we do get to that point. But in this one, we have a bunch of co-workers. Obviously, that's the title of the book, but the story starts out with one woman missing, and she doesn't show up to work one day, which is highly unusual to the rest of the employees because she is one of those types of people who has her routine down to the minute. She's very punctual. She always shows up on time. She always eats lunch at the same time. She always takes her breaks at the same time. She's never missed a day of work. So for her to not show up is very suspicious, and people start getting concerned. They call the police. They try and call her house to figure out where she's at, and it turns into a missing person case. And what we come to find out is that there is a lot more going on in that office than we thought previously, and it's really cool to see each of those things unfold. We get multiple different perspectives of different characters, and then we get kind of some fast forwarding between past and present day, which I really love. I enjoy getting information revealed through different timelines. I think it's fun to kind of switch back and forth between that. So I wish that this book had a better ending, but I just personally, for me, it fell flat. It did feel a bit rushed and not as well thought out as Freida McFadden's other books. So this one was just okay. It was 2 stars for me, but I feel like some people might still like it, but just not for me. And then the last Freida McFadden that I read in June was The Perfect Son. This one I think I didn't love as much because when I listened to it on audio, honestly, I was just distracted. Like, I think I was doing too many tasks that required a lot of focus because I feel like I would have been more into this had I been less distracted. I don't know. But in this story, we have Erica. I actually remember her name. She is the mother of a son who's in high school, I believe. And when he was younger, there were a lot of weird situations that came up where she was starting to get concerned for him and his mental well-being. There was a situation that happened when he was in school when he was younger where he showed violent tendencies, and he made a couple comments that were in line with what a serial killer would say. So she sends him off to therapy. He gets therapy. Years go by. He's now in high school. And so when he starts dating this girl, Erica, the mom, gets concerned because she's not sure her son is actually safe or if he's actually mentally well. And when the girl goes missing, that's when things start to spiral, and she's freaking out because she thinks her son has something to do with it. And we've got multiple characters, we have different relationships, we have tons of twists and turns, and I really did enjoy the majority of this book up until the last plot twist, I would say. And I don't know, it wasn't good, it wasn't bad, it was just underwhelming. So I think I rated this one 2.5, maybe 3 stars as well. Did I binge it all in 24 hours? Yes. Was it predictable? Yes. But I would still say that there are other books of Freida McFadden's that are a little bit higher up there for me that I would recommend over this one. Then I went back into fantasy romance and I read The Veiled Kingdom by Holly Renee. This one was a fun time. I will be honest, you're not going to get a lot of world building or character development in this story, but if you're looking for a fun, spicy, quick-paced time, you will definitely get that in this book. In this story, we have Nira, and she is the daughter of a king who has to keep her identity secret because she was born without powers, which is obviously a huge concern in this world because she is the princess. princess, and so she actually tries to flee the kingdom, but after she runs away, she gets caught by a rebellion group who is working to overthrow the king, her father. They don't know who she is, and she is trying to keep her identity secret still, and so we've got our main character, Dacre, who is actually a big influence in this rebellion group. I don't know if he's a leader or if he's some sort of person in charge, but he captures her and he basically gives her the choice of dying or joining their rebellion. So of course she decides to join the rebellion, and his job is to now train her to fight against the kingdom. We have tons of really good tension in this book as she's trying to keep her identity secret, but Dacre and Nira obviously cannot deny the chemistry that they have together, and so this is sort of one of those hate to love you type situations. We have very strong enemies to lovers. The ending is a massive cliffhanger, so keep that in mind before going into it. I do know that there is a duology, and so there's a second book, I think, coming out soon. Let me double check. Yes, The Hunted Heir is book 2, and it's being published on August 20th of this year. So that one's coming really soon. I would definitely recommend this. I had a lot of fun reading this. I binged it. It was so quick and easy. I rated it 3 stars though, because I still was just super annoyed / upset by the ending. It just felt like, obviously I can't spoil how it ends, but I'm really hoping that that gets resolved in book 2, which I'm sure it will. And I also would have rated this higher if we got a little bit more character development, a bit more details about the world and the magic system and things like that. So I'm sure it'll get resolved in the next book. So I'm excited to see where the series goes from here. And the next book that I read in June is Leviathan Wakes. This is book 1 in the Expanse trilogy by James S.A. Corey. This is a really good sci-fi series. So if you're looking for essentially Game of Thrones in space, this is such a good series. My husband and I are actually watching the TV series adaptation on Amazon Prime, and it's really good. We're super into it right now. And I have to take a second real quick for these hot pink sprayed edges. This special edition copy of the book is really good. I love that there's a map on the inside, but it's not like your typical fantasy map. It's actually space. So obviously this is fictional space. We have different space stations, we have Ceres, we have the belt, Eros, Earth, Mars, and Mars in this book is actually colonized. I think this takes place like 200 years or so in the future. Seriously, just such a stunning book. I love this. So in this story, it's told from 2 POVs. We have James Holden, who is the space captain on a ship that mines ice. And then we have Miller, who is a detective. And the story starts out with James Holden and his crew responding to a distress signal from another ship in space. And so when they get to that ship, they find it abandoned. They find the whole crew dead. It sort of just triggers a whole series of events that eventually lead to a lot of different problems, because in this world, we have Mars and Earth and the belt all at odds with each other. So there's already a lot of tension and politics, and this event is sort of the tipping point that brings all of space to the brink of war. And then from Miller's perspective, he's actually assigned to a case where he has to find a missing girl named Julie. And as he's trying to find her, he and Holden's paths actually end up converging, and we just get so many layers peeled back as to what's really unfolding. And I love that in this series we have such high stakes. We have a lot of politics, we have like a true crime feel, and it's just so unique and interesting. So if you're looking for a really good sci-fi series to get into with a ton of character development, a really cool plot, a lot of twists and turns and big reveals, this one's really good. I rated this book 3.5 stars, almost 4. I did feel that the world building was so dense and there was just a lot of information, which I get for a first book. It's so much setup for just a lot more to come. I believe the series as a whole is 9 books, so there's a lot to learn. It's dense, but it's so worth it, and I'm really excited to see how this book sets up for the rest of the series. And second to last book I read in June is The Invisible Hour by Alice Hoffman. I was sent a free copy of this book by Simon & Schuster, which I'm so grateful for, and I ended up really liking this. I highlighted a lot. It's a very quick read, so it's not very long, and I found it to have a lot of really good quotable moments. The writing was beautiful, the setting was really interesting. I did feel, however, that this book felt like 2 different stories wrapped in one, and I've seen a lot of similar comments to this on Goodreads, so I know I'm not alone. In the first part, we have a girl named Mia, and she was raised on a commune. So she is part of this cult, and she grows up in this community, and it's all she's ever known, but she does feel like something is off. She has an obsession with books. She loves reading, but reading is not allowed in this community, and so she's having to hide this passion of hers. Eventually, she does escape, but she has a lot of anxiety because she feels like she's being followed by the leader of this cult, who has a very strong presence in her life. And honestly, I almost wish that this book was more so about that cult aspect, because I thought it was really interesting to see how she was raised and how she ended up leaving. But then in part 2, we get a romance between her and her favorite author, which I liked, but I didn't feel as connected to the romance as I feel like I should have. And I think it's because it just felt so out of place. So while I did really enjoy this, I read the whole thing in just a couple of days. It was really easy to get through. I wouldn't call this a romance. I didn't read it for the romance, and I was a bit let down by that portion of it, but I still enjoyed it. I would say this is about a 3.5 stars for me, and I'd still recommend that, but I would just say know that going in, that it feels like 2 different stories meshed together. So whether that's good or not, I'm not sure. It's kind of like a hit or miss for me, but overall, good, just not amazing. And then lastly, we have Forget Me Not by Julie Soto. I am obsessed with this book. I rated this 5 stars, and I was actually pretty surprised going into this because I'm typically not a huge lover of modern romance. Sometimes I find just it's a little bit cringy and just not that relatable because I find the dialogue just to be over the top at times, but this was perfection. It was so funny and spicy, but also very deep at the same time. So in this story, we have our female main character, Emma, and our male main character, Elliot. Elliot owns a flower shop, and Emma is a wedding planner. And so in this book, they sort of have a second chance romance because they were dating about 3 years prior, and then they had a sort of falling out, and then jump to the future, and they are forced to work together because they are both booked for the same wedding, and the forced proximity is so good. I don't typically love second chance romance, but I really like the way this one was done because their relationship didn't end for any crazy reason like cheating or them having a big fight or anything, so I won't spoil exactly why their relationship didn't work out, but it makes so much sense and it just fits so well in the story. The way that Julie Soto writes romance is so realistic, and you can actually understand why these characters are in love with each other, and that's what I need in a romance book, especially modern romance, because I feel like sometimes it's very insta-lovey or the relationship feels shallow or surface level, and that's just not the case for this one. It's so good, and I've never read a modern contemporary romance where I was literally kicking my feet, didn't want to put this book down, rereading paragraphs over and over again, rereading entire scenes over and over again. It was just that good. And as a wedding florist myself, who's been in the industry and knows the ins and outs of weddings and how they come together, there were so many terms and lots of lingo and just references in here that I totally got, and I loved that. I related to this so much, and this is a book I can see myself rereading over and over and over again, and I just can't wait to read more of Julie Soto's work because her writing is impeccable, and she is now an auto-buy author for me. Alright, and that is everything that I read in June. I had an incredible reading month, and I don't know if I'll be able to top it in July, but hopefully I can get close, and I would love to hear what your favorite book was for June, if you've read any of these, if we have similar opinions on any of these books, so leave a comment and let me know. And also, if you made it to the end of this video, drop a flower emoji for Forget Me Not, just to let me know that you made it to the end and that you're still watching. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll see you in my next video.